Welcome to the Sean Geek and Fast Fet podcast with me, your host, Sean Geek. And this week, Buzz taking the night off. He needs to sleep. But we got a special guest, a return guest, actually, Nick Friesen.
Hey, how's it going, Sean?
Going awesome. It's going awesome. I got some stuff in the mail. So I was hoping I was going to get it before we scheduled this. But the only problem is I haven't read all three yet. I'm halfway through the first one. Was like, I wanted to get it all, I was like reading everything before discussion, but
Yep.
I'm so I guess
I
tell
did
us.
drop three books off for you, man. So it's a lot to get through.
Yeah, but I like I with indie comics especially, I don't like zip 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 zip. I look at every page, I look at every picture. I read a book faster than I read a comic book because I don't know, I just like to absorb it all. So can
Yeah.
you maybe explain the concept between like on the set list, which I'll just raise to the screen here. I don't know if people can see it. Stupid green
Yeah.
screen stuff. Anyway, set list one and set list two. So
Do you recognize the reference on the cover art? Sir?
yes, use your illusion one and two.
Yeah, I mean, men of our generation and age will get that. Some other people get it. Some people they're just like, oh, that's cool looking. But yeah, it's two comic anthologies. Well, it was to be one comic anthology, but I received like 200 pages worth and about 50-50 almost on black and white and color. So I put together one color book and one black and white book, and I knew that the artwork had to be a reference to some sort of albums. And I started thinking like, well, what's a double album, or two books coming out on the same day, so two records that came out on the same day. And the
Yep,
only time that
yep.
really happened obviously was Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. So I kind of I used that color scheme and then did two different illustrations that were kind of referential to that. But yeah, those are two books that feature writers, illustrators, storytellers from kind of all over the world, from Canada, the States, from Greece, from Australia, from London, from Iran. People from all over the world contributed to this thing, and the call out was just music comic, and anywhere from 1 to 6 pages. And from that, you get stuff about fandom, you get stuff about musicians, you get people writing about the first CD that they ever got, all sorts of, like, you ask someone to talk about music and they're going to have a different experience. Sometimes, going to concerts, something fictional, something real. I write about characters that are musicians, so that's in there too. Sometimes it's just people talking about music and stuff like that. So, or the history of certain musicians, some biography stuff in there too. So some
Yeah, like,
fictional biography, some real biography.
well, yeah, I just got through the Vincent Price piece, which I'm a massive Vincent Price fan, always have been, and um, that so like I don't know, that one's pretty cool. Like I didn't know
Yeah,
any of that
and
shit.
I start reading that submission, I remember, and being like, okay, Vincent Price is an actor. And then I start to, oh yes, of course, thriller. So this is,
Yep,
what that ties into, and kind of tells the story about him, like, you know, uh, opening up his brand to other things like cooking shows and
yep,
all
yep.
these different
The
things that
Muppet
he's
Show.
trying. Yeah, puppet shows, like all this different stuff. I remember as a kid, Vincent Price, mostly from an 80s iteration of Scooby Doo called The 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo. And Vincent
Yeah.
Price would appear to them with a crystal ball.
Yes. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so that was my introduction, and then you learn all about him as a kid. But yeah, so, and I mean that one piece, the Vincent Price piece, that was um, there's a writer, Jonathan Chance. He's English, and he's got some California artists on that piece, and it's a 4-pager, and it's beautiful. But there's some people that had been published before, and some people that had never been published before. So anthologies, they're just fun to put together, right?
So, but okay, so the thing that I was confused about, the biggest thing I was confused about is how the, pardon my French, but the fuck did you get all these people together in this book? Like this, like how do you? I know you put out like a submission thing, like, hey, I'm looking for what, but how the heck do you get this kind of response? Like this is insane. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, to get that many, however many submissions it was, like I don't even know, like 60 or so. Um, it's one of those things where you put out the call and nothing happens, and you might get one or two submissions in. So then you kind of start to panic, and then you start contacting people that you know. Like I was getting in touch with people that I'd met at shows across Canada. Like I was like, hey, Sid Church from Montreal that I met at MCAF, and blah blah blah, and like, or just people that I'd followed on Instagram that I'm a fan of, and most people reciprocated and sent me something. Most things have never been published before. Some of these things are previously published, like maybe 4 or 5 are previously
Okay.
published in some form or another, but they're music comics. Like Sid and the Sickos by Abby Kaysen, like that's one. I'm just like a fan of Abby's work, and she's I forget what state she's in, like Columbus, Ohio, maybe. I don't know. I'm sorry, Abby. Cincinnati. One of those, somewhere that starts with a C. I think Cincinnati, maybe. Um, but yeah, there's all these different people. So you start asking people, right? And you start kind of curating it. But then you start getting it in a bunch of submissions because people, you say, I think I gave it like a 2-month window maybe. So you're getting submissions, and you're getting submissions right up until the deadline. You're getting people emailing you after the deadline, of course. And I'm kind of a
Oh
stickler
yeah.
for deadlines. I mean, I've worked in journalism. I work in marketing communications now, and so deadlines are kind of key. But it's just one of those things where it's like, well, I'm not going to be going to print with this just yet. So, okay, like I'll give you until this date. And then some people just kind of like, ring you
Yeah.
along, and you never see anything from them. Oh, I promise, I promise. And then some people you're like, no, 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 like I'm a fan of your stuff, and we all have stuff going on. And so, yeah, like I'll keep it going for there. I was also for about a year, I was working a little bit with an American publisher, and that did not work out in the end. So I'd be lying if I said that part of it wasn't their reach, and one Instagram post about the submission call from them, but then things weren't working out, and I just said, "Look, I'm taking my books back. I'll publish it under my own in-service comics and records banner." I've been doing in-service records for a decade now, since 2014, putting out
Wow.
bands, other people's bands, compilations, tribute albums. We put out a tribute to Transistor Sound and Lighting Company last year for the 25th anniversary
Yep.
of that album. Great Winnipeg record. And yeah, and there's a soundtrack component to the set list as well. Just I figured, hey, like I make a music comic, so there's got to be other people that are submitting that either are in bands or make music comics or something to go along with their piece. And so, yeah, I
So
think
yeah,
there's a,
that was my question. So I scanned the QR code and I was listening to it today, and I'm like, I was trying to make the connection. Like, are these the musicians that are the artist writers on here, or is it just choices that they made? Like, hey, this is really inspiring, or like what the piece might have been about, or like,
it's a mixed bag. I mean, mine directly ties in to my piece, and there's another
yeah.
one, Poplar Tree. That one, there's a song and a piece, and the comic itself is about the song, and stuff like that. So yeah,
Which
there's
which
there's
which song is that? I'm just going through the set list here.
Poplar Tree by Erik Skilling, and the
Oh,
cartoonist
Eric
is
Skilling. Okay, yeah,
Rachel Skilling. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, and then some are just like, yeah, I'm also in a band. Here's a song that you can put on the record, right? So
That's so
we,
cool.
it's on Bandcamp, and I printed off just a short run of cassettes. When I do physicals, it's usually cassettes these days. Still do the odd CD,
Are
but
you are you are you doing the sets yourself, or are you using
I use duplication.ca. It's
Okay.
I've worked with them for a couple years now. Really amazing customer service and amazing quality products. And they've done, they do all sorts of like quote unquote real, like not that this stuff isn't real, but like they'll do like major cassette releases for major artists. Like I think they did a Death Cab cassette, like stuff like
Oh,
that. So they're I think that their team has grown considerably. It just used to be one guy, I think, named Jerry, that I was always dealing with, and now there's a number of different people that are there. But you know, it's great, and they have so much variety of pieces, and it's like anything else, right? Like you order 50 copies or 500 copies or 1,000 copies, whatever it is, and the prices will. But
yeah,
like
yeah, of course, yeah.
getting 50 copies. Sometimes I get 50, sometimes I get 100, depending on what the release is. But it's just because I table at shows, at comic shows and
Yep.
things like that, and people do pick up the cassettes. Um, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, wow!" Like they just pick up the cassette and they don't pick up the comics that go with it, right? Like they're just like, "Yeah, wasn't expecting to find like indie music here. This is cool." So yeah, it's a neat component to it. And in this day and age where, like I still collect physical media. I've got thousands of CDs and records and tapes,
I was
but
just watching a video, an Olivia Sea video, and I was like, this has got to be Nicholas's place. Like, I saw the wall of CDs, and I was like, oh, I want to see what's in there. Really
yeah, the
excited.
custom built CD wall. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that is custom built?
yeah. It started out as a two piecer when I was in an apartment, and then when we moved into this house about 12 years ago, it grew into to fill out the space as a three-piece giant
And that's your
shelving.
jam space too, right?
Yeah, when we jam, we don't, with the Olivia Sea project, we don't, maybe once a year we get together and record. I haven't had an active band in many years. You get old, you tear your rotator cuff from drawing too long,
How did you hurt your arm? Football? No.
No,
Drawing.
yeah. I did, back when I was in high school and stuff. Yeah, I had all sorts of football and baseball injuries. But
Yep.
then, it's like that's why I quit, was I was like, I'm not going to ruin my body for high school football. Um,
Yeah,
I ruined my
exactly.
body for art instead.
I've got so many injuries from drumming. It's not funny. You just like and a lot of it was like posture, like just stupid posture stuff,
I'm so
I tend to have my kit, like some people play down on their kit and some people play up on their kit, and I would get this bruise on my leg all the time because when I would if I was doing like a roll or whatever, I'd always slap the stick into my leg. And eventually my wife's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, well, love and rock and roll, man.
Yeah, it's the things we put our bodies through for, you know, whatever dumb reason. It's all worth it.
I did a Star Wars fan film. God, year was that, like 2006?
Oh, I remember you telling me about this once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, I got a pretty severe back injury from that thing. It was like I can't remember how many months of it was Cairo for several months because one of my or discs, I guess, or whatever. So I
That's
can have
killing.
the spine is like straight and it's a bunch of, well, one of them moved sideways. And I remember I had to on camera, uh, I had to say, I am not holding the director responsible for any possible bodily injury I may. And then it happened right after that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just lucky. I mean, yeah, I made student films and stuff in university, and
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that nothing ever happened. I mean, when we had firearms, we had Dave Brown, the Manitoba firearm safety expert, on set.
Oh,
But
wow.
other than that, we were flying without a net all the time. Like some of us had, like I had stunt training, but that was, that was about it, man.
What kind of stuff were you doing? Because I mean, I've seen the music videos and stuff, but well, like what kind of were they, like short films?
Yeah, anywhere from 2 minutes to 30 minutes, like all sorts of different narratives and experimental documentary. I've done all sorts of stuff, and now if I do any film, it's just corporate stuff for the day job, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
fine. But I mean, because I, my day job is good these days. But yeah, it's one of those things where like when I was in film school, I was also TAing in the film classes, so I had access to all the gear, and so I was just like
Oh,
every weekend like
perfect
stealing
scenario.
lights and boom mic and let's make something, and yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome. I do miss the filmmaking days. Like I had a lot of fun with it, but there's a frustration with film. Like there was like I did the Star Wars thing, and it was no, I won't even go into it. I've talked about it on the show before, but let's just say that when it was released, the hour and a half film ended up being 20 minutes because apparently the computer caught on fire during the editing
Uh,
process, over processing, and
there's
never had the
always something
backup.
like I remember like like the sound wouldn't work sometimes, and you got to
Yep.
like ADR it and get everyone, and then it never looks quite right or sounds quite right, and yeah.
Yeah, that was my first time doing ADR. Actually, that was my first time in a studio. So my first time in a studio was doing ADR, not even recording. So it was kind of interesting that whole process. And then I don't know where the guy got all this money to like because he wasn't allowed to make money. He actually got a cease and desist from George Lucas's lawyers.
Yeah.
But anyway, whatever. But
Yeah, it's not like you can apply for a grant for your fan film, like you
no,
gotta.
no. Yeah, I think he was in a car accident and he got a whole bunch of money
Oh my God.
and he spent all that and like I want to make a Star Wars film. And then there was this inkling that he was actually gonna like make some money, and then he got sued by a bunch of the actors on the film, and then he got the letter from Lucas's lawyer. The fact, but we did it somehow. We did it. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people look at fan films now as more of like the studios and stuff, they'll look at it as like almost like a viral marketing type thing. Like
hmm,
they may be a little less or a little more lenient on them now. I
nowadays,
don't
yeah,
know.
for
That's
sure.
that's what I've seen online anyway. That like sometimes you'll get like some He-Man Masters of the Universe fan film was like doing a Kickstarter, like real ballsy, and they were like, yeah, if
Yeah.
we get the cease and desist, we'll just change the character names. And it's like, all right, like, but why not just make your own thing? Like
Yeah, exactly. But I guess they're
that's
just trying to get eyes on it, right? Like,
yeah. I remember I used to know these actors that they were like, yeah, we're gonna get together and we're just gonna like recreate a scene from whatever hit movie is out right now, and we'll put it on YouTube and all this. And it's like, or you could write your own thing. It's the same with like fan art at shows and stuff. Like I only up until like this year, like I've got like three little pieces of fan art, and I look at it as though if if I'm a musician, I'm going to play a cover song so people at the bar might pay attention a little more to the band. Whereas at a
yeah,
comic show, if someone sees Raphael from Ninja Turtles on my on my little stand or whatever, then maybe they'll come over and check out the other work. But like these people that make a whole living out of like they'll do Artist Alley and all their stuff is just like Sailor
yeah,
Moon and Akira fan art, and they make the print for less than $1 and they sell it for 20 or $30, and they're
that's
not
what they're
making
doing.
anything of their own. It drives me nuts, man. But it's, I mean, to each their own, but that's my stance on that type of stuff.
I do have a strong opinion on that. And actually, I've been wanting to bring it up on the show, and like I couldn't get my brother to talk about it. He's like, it wasn't his thing. But so okay, so I have a confession to make. I'm reading Nothing But a Good Time,
Oh,
which is that book on
it's like Bob
80s hair
Dylan.
metal or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, and they made the documentary out of it as well. But I'm reading it from for a historical perspective, I guess. Because I mean, I did like some hair metal back in the day, of course.
Hey man, why
But
not? Like, I've read The Dirt, like, and
yeah,
I'm not like, other than a few songs, I'm not like a Motley Crue fan, but it's like,
well,
yeah,
yeah.
this is all interesting and part of the history, right?
So in the book, I'm at the beginning, and they're talking about these bands in LA and New Jersey, and I'm trying to remember what the other areas were. There's a few like key areas. It wasn't just Los Angeles, and there was like pre-poison and stuff, and everybody was starting to put makeup on and wear the platforms and the scarves and all that sort of stuff, and emulating Van Halen and Aerosmith.
Yeah.
But no, they weren't playing any original songs. It was just covers,
Yeah.
and that's all they were doing. And they were just making like money hand over fist. Some of these bands,
Yeah.
and just making money like crazy, and um, making a living at it. And so I was kind of like, okay, you're making a living. You're a professional musician for all intents and purposes. Because if you're paying the rent
Yeah.
with the money you're making as a cover band, I mean, you're doing it, right? Like, but you're not looked upon very well because you're not making original music. But the funny thing is, as a cover band, like some of these guys are saying, like, I mean, back then they were making like $1,000 a week or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're an original band, you might get a free pizza.
Yeah.
Like that's the difference. So
And
it's
that's
almost like
ridiculous that that's how art is treated, right? Like,
it's backwards. But also if you look at it this way, now you say you have a corporate job, like I have a corporate job too. So during your day job, you're paid. I'm sure you're paid a decent salary. I'm paid a decent salary. But if I were to
well,
do that
I'm
same
in a
stuff on my
nonprofit,
own,
so I'm paid an okay salary.
okay. But I mean, you're making a living at it, right? Is
Yes,
what I'm
yeah,
saying.
exactly. Yeah.
So, but if you did it on your own, original stuff, like not for a corporation, then you're making nothing. So I think it kind of equates kind of the same way. Like as a bar band, you're not, I mean, you're not working for a corporation, but you're
As a,
helping
as
the
a
bar,
as a bar band, they want music that people know to get them in the door and, ramp them up and blah blah blah. And as a musician who's writing their own material, you're trying to sell that. Whereas, like, I'm a creative, and I have a day job, and I get paid to be creative. They hired me for a reason, but I've also worked freelance, and I still work a little freelance. I'm kind of burning out and getting old, so I don't work as much freelance. But like,
yep,
if I'm working freelance, I have to go out and sell myself and be like knocking on doors, or people are getting in touch with me and blah blah blah. And then you're having to negotiate rates and chasing people down for payment. And at the very least, if you're a bar band musician, then yeah, you're probably playing once a week there, or once a month. Maybe you're lucky enough to have like a residency or something,
yeah,
and it's guaranteed work. And sometimes those musicians, like, there's a ton of Winnipeg bands that are like, yeah, I play in like this blues cover band, and I
yeah,
also have my own thing and blah blah blah. But the blues cover band, like, that pays, and so I wind up only focusing on that, and I haven't really written my own stuff. And I was even in
yeah,
a band with a guy once who was like, he'd get these, I think it was like at Le Garage, he'd get hired to play covers, but then he'd just sneak in one of his own songs, right?
yep,
Like,
yep,
and
yep.
that's, nothing wrong with that.
No, no, I applaud that when that's done. I've heard of like a lot of guys like, oh, they're in, some death metal band or whatever. But on the weekends, they're playing in a Garth Brooks cover band,
Yeah.
you know, making a crap ton of money. And it's like, but then that's the thing, like you start doing too much of one, and then, well, yeah, like you said, like, well, I'm not kind of doing my own stuff right now. I don't have time. This
Yeah.
other band is keeping me busy.
There's even like, there's session musicians, and there's like, if you're the backing band for a solo artist or something like that, like, it's, a gig is a gig. And it all depends too on what you want to be doing and what you're comfortable doing. Like, say if someone just like, yeah, I want to show up and just play bass or play drums or play keys or whatever,
Yeah,
right? And play along with people and just do that and make money, then Godspeed. But if you want to write your own songs and do your own thing, then do that too. Um, because you only got one life, so you better figure out how you want to use it, man. Like, that's where I'm at. So I've just
but
always like thrown caution to the wind and just tried to do as much as possible.
yeah, but yeah, I used to look down on people that were in cover bands, and then I was in one, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, well, this is guaranteed crowd, guaranteed people showing up, all this sort of stuff. And it's, if you do more of these songs, then you're going to get more people coming in and stuff. So it was like, okay, I can kind of see it. And like my cousin's a professional musician, but he's doing covers all the time. I mean,
yeah,
he's had bands and he's released material, and the material's awesome. I'm like, why don't you do more of that? He goes, well, I need to make a living and I need to put food on the table. Like I have a, I have a family to feed and all this. I was like, well, when are you going to go back to your music? Well, I can't. I had 5 gigs with 5 different bands last week.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Struggle.
it's a struggle. But you pay the bills. I have a day job. I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of don't consider it my real job. I consider just what I do during the day. At night and when I do my own, my own creative stuff, like that's the real stuff. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've after a lot of corporate jobs, yeah, I started working nonprofit, and they really let like I got to do a comic book about the services that we provide, like
that's
that's
cool.
yeah, like they understand who they hired, and they want to use me to the best of my abilities. So I'm pretty thankful for that. And yeah, and I get to do a lot of other creative stuff, and not everything is like that, but most of what gets requested by me, because I'm like the one person department as well. So I'm just my wife and I always talk about, because she's a creative as well. She's a journalist, and so we always talk about how we're lucky that we get to pay our mortgage with creativity and
Yeah.
things that we've made up, which isn't always the case. So we feel pretty lucky in that regard.
Um. Oh shit. I had a point. Hang on. What the hell was the
Cover
point?
bands, day job.
Cover bands. I know what it was. And I asked my brother this question. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like when it comes to comic books and stuff, he's kind of so. This debate came up. I think it was at work or whatever, and we are talking about how, um, as a writer or a creative, so you're making, your Olivia Sea comic, for example, and that's your work. You came up with it. It's your ideas. You're doing you do everything, right? I think you're also doing the coloring, like
Yeah, I do everything on
everything.
Olivia. Yeah, I pencil ink organically, and then I digitally color, and I write the scripts, and write the songs and record the songs. Other people play the songs. I play some instruments sometimes, but yeah.
Yep. So, my, I guess what I was wrestling with was like, there's all these fan sites online, right, where people are doing, well, I'm going to do, what I think should happen in the X-Men comics, or I'm going to write, like, there was a time where Twilight fan fiction was a big thing, right? There's
Yeah.
these sites dedicated to Twilight fan fiction. There's sites dedicated to Serenity or
Well, one of
whatever,
those
or Buffy.
Twilight fan fictions became 50 Shades of Grey, didn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened, right? So, well, that's the example I wanted to go to. So, but some people are like, well, you're just writing fan fiction. And I think for a while I was like, yeah, you're only writing fan fiction. But then, when I thought about it, is like, you still wrote that. I mean, maybe they're not your characters, but you still, you wrote a 700-page novel about Twilight or whatever, right? And then I'm like, well, is that any different than someone getting hired by Marvel to write Captain America or to draw Captain America? Because it's kind of the same thing. The only difference is you're getting paid to do it. Like,
Well,
is that like that? That's still fan fiction in a way because you don't own the property,
yeah, it's
or is
interesting,
it?
and that's what's interesting, because you take something like Captain America that has been, uh, was what Joe Simon, Jack Kirby
Yep,
creation, right?
yep.
And it's a character that's been around for twice as long as your lifetime and my lifetime,
Yep.
uh, on top of each other, and all these other people that have been writing it and drawing it, and is it just getting to this point where it is just official fan fiction? But like it all comes down to like the end goal. Like if you're drawing Captain America and putting that on your Instagram because you just wanted to draw Captain America, that puts you in one box. Like that is just fan
Right.
art. If you're
Yep.
drawing Captain America, putting it on your Instagram, but also going to conventions and taking your portfolio of Captain America drawings and handing that to an editor at Marvel and wanting feedback and hoping to get hired, then
Ah,
you're doing it because you want to be the artist on Captain America.
yes.
Or if you're and I feel like there's like this weird line of like, you know, you're allowed to do that, But if you're just like writing fake Captain America fan fiction or Twilight fan fiction or whatever, it's seen as a little less serious because that's not really going to get you the job. But it's like, but if you're writing a spec script for a TV show, like how that all
Yeah.
used to try to get into the writers' room, like when Elaine is writing a Murphy Brown on Seinfeld, you know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like that. You see that as like, you know, this is my spec script or like this is my calling card, whatever it is. There's something that's like, but I don't, you never hear of someone being like, oh, this guy wrote a really good 900-page Star Trek fan fiction book, so we're going to hire him to work on the new Star Trek series. Like maybe,
Has
but
that
I don't.
has that ever has that so that I'm just what has that ever happened?
I doubt it, man. Like,
Yeah.
but
But
it
it's
just
funny. But it's funny. Okay, so with this Arnel Pineda or whatever, the guy that became the singer of Journey,
mm,
essentially he was doing, well, not fan fiction, but whatever you want to call it, he was doing Journey covers on his YouTube channel. And then
yeah,
he gets the gig singing for Journey because he was that good. Same thing with the guy that was singing for Skid Row most recently.
yeah.
He does a better Sebastian Bach than Sebastian Bach, right? And he
Well, and
becomes a
that's
singer for Skid Row. But it's
that
kind of
Marky
this.
Mark movie, Rockstar,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
where he's in the cover band of the band, and then like the it was based on Judas Priest or whatever, and
yeah.
then he gets the gig, and yeah, but I think that like what was it like? Yeah, the Journey guy or like Adam Lambert fronting
Oh
Queen.
yeah,
Like these are people that with social media or television or whatever it is, they've come up in one way, and Queen sees that and says, you know, we can align ourselves with this younger audience. Like Adam's already made a name for himself as on American Idol and you know touring on his own and things like that. And he has the right voice and he mixes with that, but he also brings his own fan base here. And it's just funny that like whenever they what was it the guy from Free was singing with Queen for a
oh
minute,
yeah. Paul
stuff
Rogers,
like
yeah,
yeah, Paul Rogers, yeah. um and it's always like Queen and Paul Rogers, Queen and Adam Lambert. It's like, yeah, I'd rather like instead of just like being the singer of Queen, I'd love to have my name up on the marquee there too, right? But
yeah, yeah,
it's I don't know, man. Like there's all these different shades of gray when it comes to art and doing someone else's thing. And you're right, like if you want to be writing Spider-Man, um maybe you're Chip Zdarsky and you can write Spider-Man and you can write Batman, but you could also do sex criminals and public domain, like do your own characters
yeah,
and do your own thing, while still being very in demand from the big two and putting out your books through Image or Substack or whatever it is. But that's, you know, he's a rare case of, you know, a Globe and Mail journalist with a funny pen name who, you know, talked his way into writing Howard the Duck and Jughead and then, you know, proved his worth and you know has written some of the Daredevil run that Zdarsky did is amazing. Um, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like it all depends on what you want out of your career and what your intentions are with what you're doing. If you want to write Twilight fan fiction and your intention is just to write Twilight fan fiction and to have some other people read it online, and you do that and you put it out there, awesome.
that's
You did
good.
it. You met,
Yeah,
you had a goal. You did it. I'm proud of you. I love that you did that for yourself. And I love if you can find an audience for it. If you write a song and you put it up on YouTube, great. If you do a cover song and put it up on YouTube, maybe your intentions are just, I liked this Phoebe Bridgers song and I wanted to cover it.
yeah,
And if someone likes it, great. But maybe your intentions are totally nefarious and you're like, this is a
yeah.
popular song and I'm gonna get
Oh
YouTube
yeah,
to sing it. So it's just it it all depends on what you're after and if you're and there's no right or wrong to any of it, right? Like the lines are so blurred now. I always go back to this Thurston Moore Sonic Youth. um, I mean, I'm not a big Thurston fan anymore because he cheated on Kim Gordon and broke up Sonic Youth. um,
yeah.
but when Sonic Youth had a compilation called Hits Are for Squares, and they put it out exclusively through Starbucks. And people were ragging on Sonic Youth for that.
Uh,
Thurston Moore said, why wouldn't I want to expand my audience to people that wouldn't normally be exposed to me? If they can get a latte and then see, remember when Starbucks used to have CDs at the counter?
Yeah, I
Like,
totally remember that.
yeah, so he's like, why, why not have someone pick up a Sonic Youth CD while they're getting their latte? Like, I don't care. I'm not changing my music or compromising my art. And that's what I think it all comes down to, Sean, is if you're compromising yourself and your artistic vision to do something that doesn't feel right, then maybe take a step back and think about what you're doing. Or maybe you started out with good intentions and then you took the money and went down the rabbit hole or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you start out and you say, I want nothing more than to write Batman for DC Comics, that's my lifelong dream, and I'll do anything to do it. Great, do it, figure it out. And or if your dream is just as a hobby, I'm going to write fan fiction online and post it under a pen name, and no one will ever know it's me. Great. But if
See,
you're no.
yeah, oh, no, no, that's interesting because like for me, because I had this big internal monologue this year because I've done like a shit ton of writing. Like I'm always writing. The thing is, people don't see it. Like I mean, I've written 7 different novels,
Oh wow.
and but are any of them on the market? So then I'm like, well, why aren't they on the market? Well, why am I not? But then I'm like, I started just thinking about like the process of writing for me is the most enjoyable thing. I like, and I don't mean just writing books. I mean writing music. Like I do gaming, I write games and stuff, and I'm always writing something in some way, shape, or form. But I'm writing for me. I'm not writing for anybody else. Now, if something occasionally there's something like, oh, I think there might be a market for this, then I'll bring it to market. Like I did it a few times before, right? Like, with a Bandoma, I'm like, you know what, these songs are good enough. Let's share it to the world. And we did, did pretty decent with it. I wrote a comic book back in 2003 that it got out there. So like, awesome, that's cool. But I've had other stuff I've written that's like, no, it's good. I wrote it. I'm done. Moved on to the next thing. But I would go like I'm failing. And it's like, no, I'm not failing. I'm writing. But every time I write something that I don't put out there, there's an experience of writing it that you might have figured out how to work around like a hook, like a plot hook that you've always struggled with how to do this kind of plot hook, and then you figure it out. It's like, oh, wait a minute. But it doesn't. Plot hook's good. The story might not be great, but you figured out how to get around that plot hook that you can use later.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're just creating all the time, like, not everything needs to go out. It's all practice and it's all experience. So that's what I got around in my head. Is like, it doesn't matter if I put 7 books out. It doesn't matter. I'll put the one out that I think is, what people might like, and I'll just put it out and just do it that
Yeah.
way.
And
But
it's
it doesn't lessen anything I've done. I'm still
no,
putting work in.
it's all experience towards whatever it is. And some stuff you're gonna spend a lot of time on and go, this is perfect, and this is the like the Olivia Sea graphic novel, American Youth. Like that's one, like that's a story that I've massaged in various formats over the years, and like literally like 10, 12 years, and it took 4 years to do the book itself, and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, like this is it, like this is the big magnum opus piece.
That's
But then I have other things where it's just like, yeah, bash it out, and it's like, here's a little thing that I spent like 3 days on, and I love it. And it was the whole thing was just the exercise of doing it,
yeah,
and the exercise of doing the thing that took years or the thing that took days or weeks. Like there's no right or wrong there either. It's just, that was the exercise. But then there's some people that if they're a drummer and no matter what they do, they go into a recording studio and they're going to spend all day getting that one drum part exactly right. And I've been in bands and I've been in studios with people that have spent way too long on something trying to chase perfection, quote unquote. And that's where you kind of lose yourself if you're chasing something that maybe doesn't exist. I don't know. I'm very much, everything that I do is kind of like I always call it like documentary songwriting or documentary art
yeah,
or whatever. Like rarely will I go back and change something. Like if I'm writing lyrics like do 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 do, like that's I caught that moment. And
Yep.
if I had written that song an hour later or 6 months later, it would be a very different song.
Yeah.
And if it changes a little bit in the process of recording it or performing it, then that's cool too. It's just it's a living, breathing thing. And same with comics. Like you'll write the script, you thumbnail it, and then you get to actually draw the page, and you're like, you know what, maybe 6 panels could be
Yeah.
condensed to 2 panels, just because
Yeah.
you're spending so much time drawing all these things that you want to be as economical as possible. Because I feel like it was Paul Thomas Anderson, the filmmaker, who said something like, "No one's going to have to watch your film more than you, and no one's going to have to like read your
That's
book
so
more
true.
than you." Right? Like
Yeah.
you're the person who's going to spend the most time with this thing. Someone like, I'll be tabling at a comic show and someone comes along and they're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they pick up your books and they kind of like flip through it. And that's like, okay, the cover hooked them in enough for them to pick up the book.
Yep.
And then they're going to flip it. And usually it falls, if it's a 20-page floppy, it's going to fall right in that center, like where the staples are.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you're going to hope that that center spread is a good one that like, hooks them in enough or something. They see something there that they like. Sometimes they flip right to the back to see if there's a write up on the back or something. But you've just gotta hook people as best you can, and you gotta throw everything at the wall. And sometimes people might like the thing that you spent the least amount of time on versus the thing that you spent
Oh man.
a decade of
It's
your
so
life on.
true.
And
That's so true.
like like music, whatever. Like you listen to a song like "Fly Away" by Lenny Kravitz, and he says, "Yeah, I wrote that on a napkin." And it's like, yeah, I can tell, Lenny. It's pretty basic, but it gets played every day on the radio,
Yep.
and and it's a 25-year-old song, and it gets played every day still, and it's
It's
just the
so
most
true.
simple little riff and dumbest lyrics, but it's catchy as hell.
We
So
had we had a song on our Dome CD called Premature Evacuation.
mm.
And I'm like, it's just like the listen to like the title alone, just it's just like this isn't very good. And lyrically speaking, it was the laziest thing I'd ever done. But every time we played it live, it was like the showstopper. I'm like, oh my God, the lyrics are so dumb. Like it was just one line repeated 4 times. That was the verse. The chorus was premature, repeated a bunch of times. The second verse was one line repeated. There was nothing. There was no meat at all. But people like this is like shit. But I don't know. But you don't know. You don't know what's going to hit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You never know what's going to hit, and it won't hit unless you put it out. That's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
And,
Key.
and put a little effort into selling it. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about. I mean, we're talking about this stupid green screen thing. Talked about this, but can we talk about American Youth?
Yeah. So
So this is this
American
thing
Youth,
here.
which I just mentioned, is a project kind of like a decade in the making. So Olivia Sea is a character that I've had for a while. American Youth is a full color, 152-page graphic novel, all about her getting kicked out of her band in Winnipeg, grabbing her robot who she records music with, hitting the road, going to Portland, Oregon, joining up with her friend Casey's band, making an enemy of an influencer slash singer named Sincerity. Um, it's grounded enough in reality, I think, that anyone can kind of relate to it. Like it deals a lot with anxiety, insecurity. It's funny. There's a ton of pop culture references, but it's also totally absurd in that they time travel. They go to Mars at one point, so it has these fantastical elements because if you're going to make a crazy full color comic, you want to see them do crazy full color things. Um, so yeah, that's the log line, I guess, Sean.
I
What,
like it.
what do you want to know
But then
about
we
it?
also have this too. Wait.
Yeah, that's the CD that accompanies it. So there's 21 songs on the American Youth album. There's an instrumental and 2 covers, and the 18 originals are all in the book as well. Those songs, they're on your Spotify and Bandcamp and other stuff. But yeah, it's kind of the fully formed project itself is American Youth, and it's the best thing I've ever made.
So, so based like because I mean, I have several issues of the Olivia Sea comic book. So this is a different story. It looks like obviously because the other
Yeah,
one had more of the like there was crime fighting and stuff like that going on in there. So this is I mean I haven't opened this. I'm still reading the set list one. I'm still working my way through that. So this is less no super heroics, but there's still some travel to Mars, as you said,
yeah,
which is awesome.
yeah. So this the three first three issues of the unpredictable Olivia Sea comic, black and white, very much a superhero satire, still about music and other things, but then I started to serialize the graphic novel as I was putting it together as well. So the
So you're
first
working,
arc,
sorry, you're working on it at the same time, sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I penciled and inked and scanned over the pandemic, and then I started to do shows, and so I'd colored a little bit, but I was like, I kind of want to do just some stuff leading into this story, and that's where the first three black and white issues come in, telling the Crusherama story arc, and then I was just serializing as I went. So issues 4 to 9 of the unpredictable Olivia Sea uh, are made up into the American Youth graphic novel. So, and it's only going to be the graphic novel. Like whenever I sell out of this last pressing of these issues, then that's done. And it was really just to like have something on the table. And it's been fun too because some people like they pick it up and then I see them at a show 6 months later and they're like, oh yeah, I wanted to get the new issues from you and stuff like that. So now if you're just coming in clean, you can just pick up the graphic novel and the whole thing is there. Plus there's like extra pages and stuff to flesh out the story where I thought it needed it. So yeah.
So tell me about In-Service Records. I mean, I know some of this stuff already, but I want to make sure that people listening kind of get an idea. So you brought it up before. In-Service is it's a label that has the comics, right? Has the music, right? Also has
Yeah.
other bands on there, right?
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I formed In Service. In Service is the name of a song from the first Futurekids album, a band called Futurekids. We put out a record called "Say Goodnight to the Machines" in 2014, and so I called the label In Service after that. And that actually was the
that
first.
sorry, is that on the Bandcamp? I'm on the Bandcamp page. I'm just wondering is if that's on there too.
If you go to futurekidsband.bandcamp.com, you'll find it there. And
Oh,
then
it
the
is okay,
video,
awesome.
yeah, the video for In Service actually is the first animated appearance of Olivia Sea and her robot 4-track. And that was a video that I was like in the early days of doing my hand drawn animated music videos. I did that, and then so yeah, I was mostly just putting out my own stuff, and then I put out a record by Ryan Stanley Shadeen, who's a Winnipeg musician. I put out a couple of tribute albums, did a tribute to Matthew Goodband's Underdogs, where I
I'm
had
seeing
bands
that
from
right
all
now.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah, bands
I
from all
wasn't
over.
aware of that one for some reason. Did we not talk about that last time?
Maybe not. I don't know. I put out a
I
lot of
think we
shit.
skipped that one. I was like, oh shit, that's pretty cool.
That came out in
You've got the
2017, and I just put
yeah,
out some cassettes of that finally. And then yeah, a few other compilation albums.
the homemade Winnipeg, an isolation compilation. I'm seeing that
Yeah,
here.
that I put out during the pandemic. Just some people wrote some new stuff for that. Some people just sent me home recordings I already had, and it was like a little thing that we did as a fundraiser for the West End Cultural Center. Raised a few hundred
Oh yeah, okay.
bucks. As people were doing during the pandemic. Um, but yeah, no, in service, it's kind of if someone comes to me and says let's work on something, and I'm already planning out the next couple of tribute albums or whatever, like we did the Transistor Sound and Lighting Company one last year, um and we'll go from there.
Is it
But
going to be focused on Winnipeg centric stuff? Is that kind of the idea though?
every other one, the next one is going to be more of a Canadian, like I like the idea of these like recreating albums, like having
Yep.
someone cover each song and not just like a
Yeah, yeah.
tribute
I love
where
that.
it's just the hit singles. Um so yeah, it will be. I've got like 96 and 97 anniversaries planned, so like 30th anniversary of
Okay.
those. So in
Oh wait, now I'm thinking what that would be. Because I know somewhere in your brain there is a Pixies viewed in there
Um,
somewhere at some point.
right before the pandemic, I was getting in touch with people about doing a Kim Deal tribute
Ooh,
for whatever her
for
birthday
the breeders
anniversary.
or pod or sorry,
Yeah,
breeders or
something like that. And it, pandemic happened and everyone's schedules changed and stuff, so I just kind of let it go. Um, but yeah, no, I don't know. There's all that, and then when I started putting out comics, I just slapped in-service comics on there, and then all of a sudden, I'm putting out an anthology with in-service comics, and I have people posting on their Instagram, "Thank you so much to the team at in-service comics," and I'm like, oh, I'm the team at in-service
the team, yeah.
comics and records and whatever else. Um, it's such a small, just a me operation, and occasionally my wife will proofread something,
Yep.
and putting together these compilations and things. But my doctor told me to not do so many things, so I'm trying to pull, like, I was on the board of the Prairie Comics Festival this year that just happened a few weeks ago, and I've yeah, I keep taking on too many things, and I'm an old man now, Sean, so I'm an
Uh,
old man of
I
41.
I can relate. I got a few years on you, but actually, what they talk about mental health and that sort of stuff. Like
Yeah.
I've always juggled minimum 4 projects at a time, like always, whether it's music or writing or whatever. Like the movie stuff. I was doing movie scripts and stuff. I was always working on usually minimum 4 projects at a time, and then I had kids, and then I'm
Mm.
like okay, like I kind of hit this wall where like okay, I think I'm being incredibly selfish with my time. I gotta go change a poopy diaper, or it's like, and then but I was still trying to do everything, and I was burning out, and I hit
Mm.
this wall, and I had like this breakdown where I felt like I wasn't valid if I wasn't creating all the fucking time. And then
Yeah.
my wife said, "No, that's not it at all. Like, limit yourself, limit yourself to a couple things at a time." Because
Mm.
I have to have two things, because if I'm like, I'm not in the mood for this, I can transition
Yeah,
to
you
the
can
other thing.
pivot to the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but if I don't create, I stop breathing. Like that's unfortunately it's a, problem I have. Like it's very, very important to me. But now I'm trying to use my creative time. Like I schedule creative time for myself. And I'm trying to incorporate with my kids a bit, because both kids are in music lessons.
Mm.
Both are writing their own music,
Wow.
8 or 10, which is, it's forcing me to keep my chops up. I started taking music lessons again.
Nice.
Um, like just to like, oh shit, I didn't know that. I didn't, because when you play, like I don't know if you're self-taught or not, but when you play, you play by ear a little bit. You kind of get the feel of the groove or whatever, and you maybe don't have the technique. Like you have a technique, but you don't have proper technique, for example.
Yeah, you have your own technique. Yeah, no, like
Yeah,
I just like strum along when I'm playing bass, and it's all very simple. And same with, like, if I'm drumming, I'm just keeping a beat, and I can keep a beat. I can't do a lot of fills and things, but
yeah.
I can keep a beat, and that's kind of all I want to do is just play along with people that are really good players. I just want to be part of that sometimes.
But I'm watching, and my daughter Abby on the piano, for example, and I guess at the end of last year she learned how to, because I mean I'm a meat and potatoes piano guy, so I can play with one hand, I can't play with two.
Mm,
And she's playing with two. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Maybe I should, get my skill up.
yeah.
And then now she's, because normally you're playing 5 notes on each hand, and that's it. You're not straight. Sorry, you're not straight. Whoops. Whoa. You're not straying from your 5 fingers, right? You're not moving over or whatever. And now she started to do, I can't remember, it's crossover or transition, where she does uh finger 1, 2, 3, and then she rolls the thumb over and does, so she can do a run of 8
Well,
while keeping a rhythm on the left hand. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, you've now surpassed me. This is ridiculous. I gotta get my chops up.
yeah.
But just playing with her is fun. Like we actually had you can't see the blue screen, but I've got my drums here, I've got the piano over there, I've got the guitar over there,
Nice.
and I've had both kids come down and we're playing. I've got I've got Magic's recording software on my computer, and we're just recording whatever the hell it is. And I'm like, I'm creating right now, whether I think
Yeah.
in in the past I'd be like, okay, let's finish this so I can go work on something. And then I get to the point of like, no, I'm creating, I'm practicing with my kids, I'm getting my chops up, I'm learning from them because they don't have the same creative mind I have. So I started being less critical of myself with gotta create something. It's like, no, I am creating something or I'm practicing.
Yeah.
So when I do sit down by myself to work on something, I've got all that experience behind me to, just plow through it. So anyway, I don't know why I went there, but just, but but so you were saying that you had to limit yourself.
Yeah, I've still got, I've kind of like planned out the projects for the next couple of years, and I'm trying real hard not to, like, just to kind of focus on the main stuff that I actually want to achieve, because your time is precious and you need time to rest and just be with friends and family and things too. So yeah, I you got to like switch off your brain sometimes and switch into rest mode. But yeah, it's just kind of like picking and choosing your projects and your collaborations as well, because I've also like just started saying no to freelance stuff, because it as much as it's very flattering when someone reaches out and says, hey, blah blah blah, I'd like you to do this with me. um, I don't always play well with others, I guess. The people I do collaborate with, I've collaborated now with for many years, and I like that. And then just doing someone else's vision isn't always my favorite thing. And it's one thing when you're younger and you're building your portfolio and blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
But now I'm just like, I don't care. I just want to work on my own thing. And like I might take the odd commission or whatever, but just some friend of the family reaches out and, hey, can you do this retirement gift? And it's like, yeah, for sure. That's a nice thing, and I'll help you out there. But I just, yeah, some people get in touch and you're like, I don't know you, man. Like, I don't have the time or the energy, and you probably don't have the money, and
Yep,
it's just one of
yep.
those. So I really only have time to do the things that I want to do, on top of the day job, on top of life. Um,
So do you
yeah,
schedule? So do you actually schedule your creative time?
yeah. Sometimes it's just like as simple as, oh, it's Sunday afternoon and I feel like drawing, or I feel like going for a walk. Like, as long as I get in like an hour here and an hour there, I'm usually happy. But like, I've scheduled out like for my work day and then into the evening. Like sometimes if the work day gets busy, 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 then I'm like down to the 15-minute blocks of like I have to do tick this off, tick this off, tick this off.
Okay,
If I
yep.
want to accomplish my own creative stuff today as well, then I've got to, like if I want to have a certain amount of creative juices or whatever by the evening, then I've got to get all these other things done. And then sometimes things roll over into the next day. But I've literally got all the comic stuff planned out, like for the next 4 or 5 years of what I want to be working on. And you're right, like having like multiple things in the fryer, being like, well, this one, like this drawing style is a little looser, so it's less pressure to work on. Like I can do a
Yep.
page in a more cartoony style in a couple hours, or I can spend a whole 8 hour day just penciling and maybe inking, a full page of something that's more photorealistic. Um, just because it takes more time. Yeah, it's and you got to take rests too, and do your physio exercises and stuff like that.
Oh, I've incorporated some physio exercises as well. Like it's just as we get older, man, like our bodies, they're
Yep.
not as pliable as they used to be. So what I started, and I know this is kind of going off topic, but I actually schedule my creative time, but then I also schedule time with my kids.
Mhm.
Like I actually like, and of course the schedule's not always followed, but I make sure that I write down this is what I'm doing with Abby, this is what I'm doing with Ellie,
Yep.
and I make sure I schedule that time in. I can't be distracted by, well, maybe I'll just pick up my phone and just see if I get an answer from that interview that we wanted to do. Like I was trying to chasing some, and like, no, I don't even pick up my phone. I put it down and my time, and I try to make sure I spend time with each of the kids
Mm.
because they'll often get jealous. And sometimes they want to do music. It's like, okay, well, I wanted to do music this week, so now I'm doing it with the kids. Perfect.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to schedule not just your time, but schedule your family's time too, like your wife's time or whatever. I think it's
Yeah.
important, or to schedule exercise. That's the big one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's scheduling, but also not being hard on yourself if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't stick to that schedule. Just being graceful with yourself and reminding yourself, like, yeah, I'd like if I want to get these things done, blah blah blah, but things will inevitably roll over into the next day or just get taken off the list altogether, right? Because you can't do everything. But what's the most important thing is, yeah, like seeing family and friends and spending time with the people that you love and care about, above all else. Like all this other stuff, it's a creative outlet, and it's fun to do. And I'm lucky in that people are starting to respond to the work, but like like yourself, like reaching out, and now I'm a two-time guest on your show, sir. So
yeah. It's
you know
awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I don't know. So I'll be honest. I get up at 5 in the morning for work.
Yeah,
So
go to
yeah,
bed.
we'll cap it off here. I want to see spend some time with my wife before bedtime. But where do we find all your stuff? So we get Inservice Records, bandcamp.com to get the music, but it's also on the website, which is I have
There's
it.
there's inservicerecords.wordpress.com. If you want to follow me, I'm at Nicholastronaut on every social media channel. So Nicholas Tronaut, like astronaut.
Right? Yeah,
Um, and that, yeah, like on your Insta, Twitter, etc., YouTube. And then, yeah, nicholastronaut.wordpress.com as well is the website, or oliviasea.net. There's so many places to find people. But yeah, Olivia Sea has her own website. You can listen to Olivia Sea music on Spotify. You can find all this stuff. Like really, like I live on Instagram the most, and I have my link tree on there. So if you just find me on Instagram, shoot me a follow, find all my stuff. Yeah, it's I make a lot of stuff. I'm going to be at Winnipeg Comic Con the end of this month, and the punk rock flea market on November 2nd. And then I'll be touring around probably Canada again in the spring.
that's awesome. I like how busy you're keeping, but yeah, make sure you look after you too.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, you too.
Awesome.